I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear that I
US President Joe Biden needs to lower expectations about what he can achieve if Democrats are to stave off disaster in 2022 midterm elections. Analysts said on the eve of the anniversary of Biden's first year in office. Biden's poll numbers have sagged amidst rising inflation, the continuing coronavirus pandemic, and a legislative agenda that has stalled in narrowly divided Congress. The expectations have hurt Biden, said Larry Sabato, who heads the University of Virginia's Center for Politics.
The expectations have hurt Biden. For a long time, we believed incorrectly, bad advice maybe, that the pandemic would be in our rearview mirror at some point, and we'd be able to move back to the very same life that we had before. Well, that's a fairy tale, and we recognize that now. Other problems can be dealt with. Inflation will certainly come down in time, but how fast? For Biden and the Democrats, it better be quickly. Otherwise, they'll pay the price in November. You have to adjust your expectations downward when you're faced with problems that are not going to get out of your way. And that's what Biden has. He's got to lower his expectations for what he can get done and lower everybody else's expectations for what he can get done and adjust to the reality he's got, because it's probably going to get worse after November.
Biden's first-year anniversary comes at a rocky time. His centerpiece Build Back Better legislative agenda is on ice after fractious congressional negotiations, and COVID-19 hospitalizations are at a record. Tensions are also high with Russia over a military buildup around Ukraine, and Biden's voting rights push has failed to muster the necessary support in Congress amid universal Republican obstruction, at a time of questions about the fragility of America's political system.
Look, I didn't overpromise, but I think if you take a look at what we've been able to do, you'd have to acknowledge we made enormous progress. But one of the things that I think is something that, one thing I haven't been able to do so far is get my Republican friends to get in the game of making things better in this country. I did not anticipate that there'd be such a stalwart effort to make sure that the most important thing was that President Biden didn't get anything done. Think about this. What are Republicans for? What are they for? Name me one thing they're for. Yes, I'm confident we can get pieces, big chunks of the Build Back Better law signed into law. And I'm confident that we can take the case to the American people that the people they should be voting for, who are going to oversee whether the elections in fact are legit or not, should not be those who are being put up by the Republicans to determine that they're going to be able to change the outcome of the election. Well, it's clear to me that that we're going to have to probably break it up. I think that we can get, and I've been talking to a number of my colleagues on the Hill, I think it's clear that we would be able to get support for the $500+ billion for energy and the environmental issues that are there, number one. Number two, I know that the two people who've opposed, on the Democratic side at least, support a number of the things that are in there. For example, Joe Manchin strongly supports early education, 3 and 4 years of age, strongly supports that. There is strong support for, I think, a number of the way in which to pay for these, pay for this proposal. So I think there is. I'm not going to negotiate against myself as to what should and shouldn't be in it, but I think we can break the package up, get as much as we can now, and come back and fight for the rest later. The answer is, based on some of the stuff we've got done, I'd say yes, but it's not nearly unified as it should be. Look, I still contend, and I know you'll have a right to judge me by this. I still contend that unless you can reach consensus in a democracy, you cannot sustain the democracy. And so this is a real test, whether or not my counterpart in China is right or not when he says autocracies are the only thing that are going to prevail because democracies take too long to make decisions and countries are too divided. I believe we're going through one of those inflection points in history.
Andrew Smith of the University of New Hampshire says that the chaotic American withdrawal from Afghanistan in August 2020 has weakened America's international standing under Biden.
Well, I think that our allies are very frightened because they've seen the backstop, the most powerful player in international politics for the last 75 years, looking again like we did in Vietnam in 1975, unable to keep the commitments that we've made to our allies, and doing so in a very visible way. I think that's rattled our allies. I think that's one of the reasons that the Germans, for example, and other Europeans have gone ahead with working with the Russians on the Nord Stream oil project, because they don't believe that the United States is necessarily there to back them up. It's certainly emboldened our enemies. Putin's activities in the Ukraine and Central Europe are very troubling. And it's certainly emboldened China as well by their saber rattling towards Taiwan.
But while parts of Biden's ambitious agenda have been put on hold, Sabato points out that Biden does have several significant achievements to point to. A large majority of Americans have gotten at least one vaccine shot. The unemployment rate has dropped amid record job creation, and Biden did pass $1 trillion COVID relief and infrastructure bills, he said.
We've put too much emphasis on what didn't go right. We've forgotten what did go right. And what did go right was, by and large, further development of the vaccines and distribution of the vaccines. And the fact is that most of us are vaccinated at least a bit, if not fully. It's also true that he got the COVID-19 $1 trillion bill through early in his presidency. Then he got the $1 trillion infrastructure bill through. And there have been other accomplishments along the way, and we de-emphasize those because we always focus on what hasn't been done or what was supposed to be done and didn't get done.
Nonetheless, he said, Biden needs to make progress on his signature legislative agenda.
Biden has to get some piece or pieces of it passed. It's clearly not going to pass as a whole. Just like I think they've been living in a fog about the voting rights bills. It's been clear for some time that they were not going to pass. So you have to adjust to reality quickly if you're in the White House, and there hasn't been that kind of quick adjustment. And there are reasons why. I think the left would have gone ballistic had Biden said, well, it doesn't look like they're going to be passed. The left expected him to go hard after the two senators who really are standing in the way. But that gets to the central problem, which isn't the pandemic and it isn't inflation. It's the fact that in the elections of 2020, the Democrats didn't do particularly well except for the presidency.
Both the Build Back Better and voting rights legislation have stalled in a narrowly divided Congress, with the lack of cooperation from Senators Joe Manchin and Christine Sinema, both Democrats, making it nearly impossible for Biden to make significant progress.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which you are about to enter, so help you God.
Getting voting rights legislation through is essential for the Democrats in the coming midterm elections, Smith said.
There are going to be a lot of people that are very angry about the inability to get that passed. They're going to blame Republicans for it rather than the Biden administration and the Democratic Party. And I think that will help Biden in increasing minority turnout, because he's got to have that. If black turnout drops 3%, 5%, in many states, that means that Senate seats go, certainly House seats go, and governor seats go. And rallying the support of minority voters, black and Hispanic voters, is something that I think is really critical for electoral success for Democrats in November.
Biden's fellow Democrats are fighting to retain their control of Congress, slated for November 8, amid a flood of Republican-backed state laws that civil rights advocates say could surpass black and other minority votes.
Let's go get this done. Thank you.